Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
One of the amazing things about studying from the Tanakh every week is that even if you have read it before, you come across something new if you keep studying rather than merely repeating what you have seen in the past. And this week, something struck me that I had never come across before, a comment that I didn't even know I needed. And yet, it was there, and now you get a sermon. So, congratulations. Tomorrow we will be reading the Haftorah for Chayei Sarah, and it is most famous because it includes the presentation of Solomon to become the new king after David passes away. And we'll talk a little bit about the politics of that scene tomorrow. But at the beginning, there is a description of the competitor to Solomon. That is to say, one of his other brothers from a different wife, another son of David from a different mother, Adoniyahu. And he has already begun saying that he will be king. After all, if you want to take over, you want to make sure you get everybody in position before the old king dies, so that way when he's dead, you can jump into that place and it is a fait accompli and you'll be the new king. There was no rule exactly of who would be king back then, so he had a fighting chance. So he gathers together various dignitaries, important people in the community, important people in the temple, and he rides around in his chariot with 50 runners. 50 runners. Okay, are we all impressed by 50 runners? So this is what got me looking through the commentaries. Why are we mentioning 50 runners? Is really this worth our time for the Tanakh to record that he had runners? Of course he had runners. Everybody had runners. The commentaries point out even rich people had runners. You didn't have to be a prince to have runners. How is having runners around your chariot going to make you any more impressive than the next Shlemiel running around with people in front of his chariot? Says the commentary, but these were special runners, and that is why it is mentioned, because these runners had their spleens removed.
Oh boy.
Exactly. And I'm like, okay, what? I'm sorry, Talmud. What do you mean they had their spleens removed? And is that a good thing?
Not really.
Well, according to ancient medical thinking, that is to say, not just within the biblical lands, but all the way throughout Greece and Rome and other ancient places, the spleen was considered to be a hindrance to good running, that you would be much faster without your spleen. Now, what is the thinking behind this? Well, who here's ever gone for a nice long run and felt a bit of a heaviness around the center of their body? Felt that little bit of what we would call a stitch around that part of the body. Well, in the ancient medical wisdom, which thankfully we don't listen to now, the idea was, it must be the spleen that is causing the problem. And therefore they would remove the spleen in order to make you run faster. So having the spleen removed was the equivalent of turbocharging your runners. So having 50 people that were of that caliber of runner, now that's impressive, right? Any Shlemiel can own a BMW, but it takes a real person to own a Bugatti. Right? That is what was trying to be established as the Talmud by this entourage, that these were the exceptional elite runners who had gone so far as to have the spleen removed.
Why didn't they just get horses?
What's that? Oh, the horses also had their spleens removed, by the way, as well. That was also an ancient tactic for making your horses faster. What's that?
Splenectomy.
Yeah, splenectomy, exactly right. And you'd be surprised how much I learned about splenectomies this week. To see what was behind all of this, whether there was any truth to it, no, and what was the thinking. So it's the little rabbit holes that you go down when you study Tanakh. But as I was reading this and thinking about it, I suddenly realized, we're sitting here rolling our eyes going, how can they be so stupid? What is wrong with them? I mean, you're going to hurt yourself to do what? Add a couple extra seconds off of your time and be that much more impressive? But then it began to sound all that much more familiar. How many athletes at the elite level will undertake extreme regimes, diet, training in order to shave a few seconds from their time? How many of them will resort to not only illegal but dangerous substances in order to, quote, improve their body and allow them to shave off a few more seconds from that time, or lift a few more pounds above their heads, or have slightly further endurance. Seeking an edge in competition through extreme physical modification is not so strange to us. They may have removed the spleen and we can laugh because it is not actually efficacious, but we have people all around us that are doing things perhaps not quite as drastic in the ectomy department, but certainly having long-term deleterious effects upon them, their body, their psychology, and the sports that they purport to love. But it is not only athletes. It is not only athletes that are willing to do this. How many people are willing to undergo the knife for plastic surgery to make themselves a little bit prettier, a little bit more handsome, to restore the hairline that's receding, to tuck a little bit around the middle? How many are willing to take not only legal or FDA approved drugs, but anything that they imagine, no matter how scammy it might be, in order to lose a few more pounds, to get ready to look better in their bathing suit? How much do we spend? How much do we damage ourselves seeking a little bit more perfection at this horrible, horrible price? Splenectomies sound bad, but we have absolutely outdone our ancestors in many, many ways at seeking this as well. And of course, it's not only in our physical appearances. How many people are willing to go a little bit further, do a little bit more, cheat a little bit better in order to produce a higher income for themselves, a little bit more status for themselves, to scrape and climb that greasy pole in order to imagine themselves higher than someone else? Time and time again in competitions, whether it be romantic, business, political, or athletic, we are willing to damage ourselves if we think that we can get ahead. But the Haftarah, of course, teaches us that it doesn't work. That Adoniyahu doesn't become the next king. Instead, Solomon is the next king. And it's not because Solomon has 51 spleenless runners. It is precisely because Adoniyahu has done what he has done. That when the prophet Natan and Bathsheba, the wife of David, come to him and express their alarm at what is happening, it is in fact the description of the politicking, the arrogance, the behavior of Adoniyahu that is so disheartening, and that helps encourage David to publicly and irrevocably name Solomon as his heir. It is because of the steps that Adoniyahu took that thought, I will be king because I will display my magnificence, that David realized that he needed to pick a different son who was not going to display his magnificence like this, but would instead display magnificence through wisdom, through a devotion to God, through a devotion to the nation. And so it was the less flamboyant, less reaching and grasping, and less destructive son, Solomon, that would be chosen to become king. And he did have a wonderful start. Unfortunately, at the end, it does come back to haunt him, that he becomes arrogant and ostentatious in many ways, but we can't expect that everybody will have an uninterrupted life of goodness. Even somebody like Solomon can trip at the final hurdle and not quite make it across the finish line as he had begun. And so we recognize from this story not just that we are fortunate that David had still the ability to choose the better son to be his king, but we learn as well for ourselves. Do we pursue excellence of wisdom, excellence of character, excellence of heart, or do we presume just to chase after excellence of physical form, of our ability to gain power over others in business or other fields? The Torah and Tanakh make it clear which should be our goal, and truly, we only get a trophy for one of those. Choose wisely. Just so happens the one that we get the trophy for doesn't demand that we remove our spleens, which I'm also grateful for.